are you doing?
रानी, इस घर में कुछ है जो टूटता नहीं।
ये पिलर कभी नहीं टूटेगा। रुंगटा स्टील टीएमटी से बना।
रुंगटा नहीं तो घर स्ट्रॉन्ग नहीं। रुंगटा स्टील टीएमटी बार एकदम सॉलिड।
आर प्योर शाही पनीर मसाला, डिलीशियस, हेल्दी एवरीडे।
दादी के हाथों का जादू और खुशबू से महकता घर, माँ की मुस्कुराहट और खाने की सुगंध। MDH गरम मसाला,
क्योंकि हर रिश्ता है स्वाद से जुड़ा।
We are
The Epstein Files Transparency Act's December's 19 deadline prompted the recent release of the Jeffrey Epstein Files, which disclosed a vast amount of information that connects the finance's personal life to his connections to most influential people in the world. Tens of thousands of pictures and papers are now visualizing what was once whispered in the deposition transcripts. The House Overnight Committee collected over 95,000 photos and documents from Epstein's estate, which served as a foundation for the recent revelations. Here are the Epstein Files, page number 1.
The recent release of the Jeffrey Epstein Files, triggered by the December 19, 2025 deadline of the Epstein Files Transparency Act, has unveiled a massive trove of data that bridges the gap between the financier's private life and his proximity to the world's most powerful figures. What was once whispered in deposition transcripts is now being visualized through tens of thousands of images and documents. The backbone of the recent disclosures is a collection of approximately 95,000 photographs and documents obtained from Epstein's estate by the House Oversight Committee. While the Department of Justice, DOJ, began its mandated release on December 19th, House Democrats had already begun a drip feed of these materials. The files include estate photos, high-resolution images of Epstein's properties, including his Manhattan townhouse and his private island, Little St. James. Photos of a dentist's office in his Caribbean home, BDSM equipment, and peculiar office decor, such as a chalkboard with words written on it. A commemorative book given to Epstein for his 50th birthday, containing notes and signatures from various elites. The files contain visual confirmation of several high-profile connections that have been the subject of speculation for years. One significant image features former President Bill Clinton smiling alongside Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. The photo reportedly bears Clinton's signature in gold ink, though his representatives have long maintained he knew nothing of Epstein's crimes. Photos capture Bill Gates in social settings with Epstein, including one where he is seated with the financier and the former Prince Andrew. Another photo strangely showed Gates and Andrew together with King Charles, cropped out of the original frame. In a surprising intersection of worlds, filmmaker Woody Allen is seen in multiple photos, including one where he is conversing with former Trump advisor Steve Bannon at an Epstein-related social gathering. The files offer a nuanced examination of the relationship between Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump, which spanned approximately 15 years before a falling out in 2004. Trump appears in at least 3 images from the new batch. One shows him at a Hawaiian-themed party surrounded by 6 women whose faces are redacted. Another shows him sitting with a woman on what appears to be an aircraft. Despite the provocative nature of the photos, investigators and journalists note that none of the images released thus far show Donald Trump engaging in illegal activity or provide smoking gun evidence of involvement in Epstein's sex trafficking ring. Despite the December 19th deadline, the release has been criticized for being incomplete. Huge swaths of the 95,000 photos remain unreleased to the public. The House Oversight Committee has stated it is redacting the faces of potential victims to protect their privacy. The Department of Justice released a partial batch on the deadline day, announcing that the remainder of the files would be released over several weeks. This has led to accusations of a cover-up from some lawmakers who argue the DOJ is violating the transparency law. The files have unearthed details that paint a picture of Jeffrey Epstein's obsessive need for leverage and his strange intellectual preoccupations. Photos of a landline phone at Epstein's island residence showed first names written on the speed dial, hinting at the immediacy of his access to powerful people. Some of the most personal images include Epstein in a bathtub and a selfie of the financier with a swollen lip, the context of which remains unknown. The release has turned into a partisan battleground. Democrats, led by Representative Robert Garcia, claim the files prove a White House cover-up. At the same time, the White House and Republican allies accuse Democrats of cherry-picking photos to create a false narrative against President Trump, noting that Trump himself signed the act to release these very files.
And in other news that we're tracking, the Rourkela police have busted a massive fake lottery syndicate. 4 men have been arrested, rupees 25 lakh cash has been seized, and a full counterfeit ticket printing setup has been recovered. Here's a report on that.
In a major crackdown, Rourkela police have busted a fake lottery racket operating under Planside police station limits. Acting on a tip-off, multiple raids were carried out across the city on December 20th. Police recovered counterfeit lottery tickets, incriminating material, and rupees 25,37,260 rupees in cash. The accused were manufacturing fake lottery tickets and distributing them through agents across Rourkela. 4 men have been arrested in the case. Police seized 8 mobile phones, 5 notebooks, a desktop computer, printer, and other material used to print the fake tickets. A case has been registered under sections of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita and Lotteries Regulation Act. The police are now tracking other members of the network and probing the full extent of the racket.
This week on Get Me Right, 3 events that together signal a tectonic geopolitical shift in the world. The United States released its national security strategy paper. The UK, its intelligence and security report from the parliament. And amidst all this, China crossed, for the first time in world history for any nation, $1 trillion of trade surplus. And then the gas chamber that our national capital becomes every winter. Is there any hope, or are we condemned to live this forever? This weekend, Saturday and Sunday, only on Republic TV.
थोड़े में ज़्यादा स्वाद यही तो है इसकी खास बात। वाओ मामा, क्या स्वाद है? अरे मेरे राजा। सबका राजा आरती और मसाला। केसरिया से मन जोगी हुआ रे, दिल झूमे देखो। मतवारा हुआ रे, केसरिया से मन जोगी हुआ।
हर पल मनाओ केसरी त्योहार। विमल, बोलो जुबान केसरी।
दादी के हाथों का जादू और खुशबू से महकता घर, माँ की मुस्कुराहट और खाने की सुगंध। MDH गरम मसाला,
क्योंकि हर रिश्ता है स्वाद से जुड़ा।
प्लीज स्टॉप। झुमका तेरा झुमका
नॉट देयर, मेरा काउंटर टॉप टूट जाएगा। मेरी चिमनी टूट जाएगी। What are you doing?
रानी, इस घर में कुछ है जो टूटता नहीं।
ये पिलर कभी नहीं टूटेगा। रुंगटा स्टील टीएमटी से बना।
रुंगटा नहीं तो घर स्ट्रॉन्ग नहीं। रुंगटा स्टील टीएमटी बार एकदम सॉलिड।
आर प्योर सूजी पास्ता उबालो मिलाओ और खाओ
8 मिनट में तैयार।
क्या टेस्ट है सबका राजा आर प्योर मसाला।
Hi there, welcome back after a short, unavoidable break to your favorite deep dive show on stories contemporary and consequential for India. This week, the Parliament ended with moderate legislative success and lots of noise, like always. An issue that should have been center stage, the air emergency in North India, got sidestepped by politics. Let's make it our priority in this episode. Second, 3 key developments on the geostrategic and geopolitical front came together this week. The Trump administration released a national security strategy paper. The United Kingdom Parliament came out with its intelligence and security report. And China crossed US $1 trillion in trade surplus for the first time in history for any nation. We will connect the dots. Let's get going. There are moments in history when great powers announce their decline not through defeat, but through doctrine, through the careful diction of strategy papers, the cautious choreography of speeches, and a studied silence that follows. The United States has reached such a moment as it subconsciously prepares to pass on the baton to whosoever, most likely China. If you club the 3 events, the Trump administration's national security strategy, released past week, the UK Parliament's Intelligence and Security Committee's scathing assessment of its own China response, and China's breathtaking crossing of US $1 trillion trade surplus this week, one can read the tea leaves on a tectonic shift in global power balance. Washington is no longer claiming to lead the world. It is only desiring to secure its hemisphere, which is half, to respect China's rise, and to demand that allies fend for themselves. We have long argued on this show that America has dimmed its beacon and turned inward, while factories beyond its borders, often Chinese, sometimes Chinese-led, and everywhere China-enabled, reconstruct the sinews of global power. This is not a retreat with trumpets. It is a retreat with rhetoric. Sample this.
Indeed, it's only under President Trump's leadership during his first term and now that we've been able to restore America's greatness after years of suffering under the so-called bipartisan consensus, which is really just a euphemism for disastrous foreign policy. Out with utopian idealism, in with hard-nosed realism.
This was US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth declaring the end of American utopian idealism at the Reagan Defense Forum last week. He not just shred the post-Cold War transatlantic foreign policy consensus, he drafted its obituary. He framed a strategic realignment, prioritize Western Hemisphere, demand burden sharing from allies, and adopt a conciliatory posture towards China's military buildup. Quote, stable peace, fair trade, and respectful relations with China, unquote, he said, while respecting the historic military buildup China is undertaking. The rhetoric is not accidental. It is a declaration that the US now recognizes China not merely as a competitor or adversary, but as peer, and crucially, a peer whose industrial and military tempo must be respected rather than resisted at any cost. While alarm bells stopped ringing some time ago in world capitals, from Tokyo to Warsaw to Berlin, between Hexet and the NSS, it is clear now that Pax Americana is no more an insurance policy. It tells Europe, not gently, that the era of American babysitting is over. And it tells Beijing that Washington's narrative has shed its messianic ambitions in favor of a kind of pragmatic detent. No sermonizing, on your guard, and maybe look the other way on Taiwan. The outline is stark. Dominate the Americas, respect China's rise, undermine Europe, ignore India, retreat from the Middle East, and treat Africa as a commodity corridor shared with China. In an age of contested supply chains and precarious alliances, the language of respecting a rival's build-up is more than euphemism. It is an acknowledgement of asymmetry in industrial capacity and of limits. From Cold War, America has transitioned to a cold bargain, in which Europe is no longer a co-architect of the liberal order, but a lecture hall of woke left scolds and fragile militaries, which, if we are brutally honest, suits the political appetite of Washington's current mega mood. Japan and South Korea are appreciated in proportion to their defense spending. India is a civilizational partner in theory, just in theory, but non-essential in the immediate calculus. At least not till we acknowledge Uncle Trump's role in Operation Sindoor, which of course we won't. This week's milestone, China posting a $1 trillion trade surplus, $1 trillion worth of more exports than imports, is not merely economic trivia. It is a trumpet blast that echoes across defense planning rooms from Arlington to Canberra. Exports nearly $3.4 trillion, imports around $2.3 trillion in the first 11 months. Semiconductor shipments rising nearly 25%, shipbuilding exports surging, auto exports cresting beyond 6.5 million vehicles, and a currency engineered to keep costs competitive and supply chains sticky. This is not a sprint. It is an industrial marathon run across continents with relay teams in Southeast Asia, Mexico, and Africa, all stitched into an ecosystem of production hubs designed to outflank tariffs and outpace rivals. China's export machine has become a global scaffolding, electronics topping $1 trillion, rare earth dominance from mine to processing plants, medium advanced fab capacity scaling even without top-end chips, and cities specialized with relentless precision. Xixi for hair dryers, Wenzhou for lighters, Ningbo for home appliances. It is an economy of clusters that behaves like warships in a convoy, mutually reinforcing, collectively unstoppable. The world may still joke about made in China label. The joke is stale. The machine is not. This industrial surplus is not just wealth, it is mass. And in geopolitics, mass becomes momentum, as in physics. Momentum becomes leverage. Leverage becomes deterrence. Deterrence becomes doctrine, which is why Washington's language has bent towards respecting what it cannot reverse at an acceptable cost. The United States is at least showing clarity on where it stands. Across the Atlantic, the UK Parliament's Intelligence and Security Committee has produced a report that feels less like oversight and more like confession of confusion. The government's response to China is robust and clear-eyed, ministers claim. But the committee's verdict, no strategy, no whole-of-state approach, no resources, no speed, agencies that did not recognize responsibility for countering Chinese interference, policy departments lacking expertise or the mandate to confront Beijing's overt influence operations. The result is not just vulnerability, it is vacancy, the absence of a strategic posture in the face of a systemic rival who excels at playing the long game. Here is the uncomfortable symmetry. Washington retreats in doctrine London stalls in capacity. One withdraws from global leadership, the other fails to muster domestic coherence. Beijing, meanwhile, scales. And the scale has a name: manufacturing. China commands roughly 28% of global manufacturing. The US hovers around 17%. Chinese shipyards are outproducing American ones. Chinese steel output dwarfs US production by an order of magnitude, 12 times. Same for critical minerals, rare earths. When the Atlantic called the new national security strategy the longest suicide note in American history, the rhetoric bites because the facts have teeth. Washington's swerve towards hemispheric prioritization and allied burden sharing reads in part like an attempt to reconcile strategic ambition with industrial reality. Respecting China's buildup is not a confession of defeat. It is an implicit bargain that war without overwhelming capacity is unsustainable, and that soft power without hard production is theater. The Australian Strategic Policy Institute published its latest critical technology tracker this week, covering high-impact global research in 74 areas. It found that China now leads in 66 of those technologies, in fields as varied as computer vision, quantum sensors, and nuclear energy, with the US ahead in just 8. This even as AI compute, electric vehicles, battery chains, shipbuilding, and consumer durable clustering increasingly tilt towards ecosystems Beijing has carefully orchestrated for 2 decades. Leadership is not just invention, it is scaling. The US perhaps still remains beautiful at invention. China remains relentless at scale. The NSS language hardens an earlier trend. Obama's free-riding derision for allies has become Trump's burden sharing. Proxies must defend themselves. Allies must pay up, arm up, build up. In theory, this is fair. In practice, it is messy. Europe, spooked by American political volatility, is hedging. After the Greenland grab push from Trump, Denmark has shifted its missile defense shield from American to European. Japan and South Korea have increased budgets and incentives to deepen military-industrial production. India faces tariffs instead of trust, and the delicate triangulation with Washington against Beijing becomes awkwardly transactional. The trust economy of alliances, built on reliability, predictability, reciprocity, seems downsized. With America in an artificial intelligence frenzy and even a bubble, it is tempting to believe that AI is the cure-all, that algorithmic supremacy will compensate for industrial insufficiency. But the real economy does not run on models. It runs on motors. Compute chips are critical, of course. So are the cooling systems, fabs, packaging, power grids, and logistics networks that make them usable at scale. Even here, like former UK PM Rishi Sunak warns, Trump's greenlighting of NVIDIA's H200 sales to China could inadvertently furnish Beijing's AI capacity beyond what Trump comprehends. Even otherwise, software does not cast steel, build hulls, process rare earths, or ship 6.5 million cars. China's rise underscores a forgotten truth. The nation-state is a hardware device. Ideals, institutions, and codes are firmware. But without hard production, the device has no power. The NSS is an acknowledgement that the United States finds itself in the position of Britain in the late 19th century or Germany and Japan in the 20th, overtaken militarily by a rising industrial powerhouse. China's gaming of international trade, rising hostility to neighbors, and especially its accelerating military buildup show the urgent need for credible deterrence. So what are the options available to India, for example, and the rest of the world facing this American retreat and a wolf warrior China? We can collectively either sulk or strategize. India's omission in Washington's newer rhetoric seems more a personal peeve. New Delhi has rightly not taken offense. We are already showing a spine and a strategy. Multi-alignment is the name of the game. Don't miss the deliberate intent in these pictures when Prime Minister Modi received President Putin of Russia at the tarmac of the IGI airport. In a way, New Delhi has been wise in its soft push back against early calls for Quad's militarization, given that United States itself seems to be quitting Indo-Pacific. The goal from here on should be to create resilient corridors of trade, technology, energy, and defense that neither depend on America's moods nor on China's monopolies. Hard-nosed industrial policy, coupled with diplomatic swordplay, will decide India's fate in this decade. Collectively, the production capacities of the rest of the world, America included, still match and compete with China. If everyone coordinates and comes together, then maybe a global network of supply chains can emerge, not dependent on China and not feeding the Chinese industrial complex. But that's a long ask. Let's be clear. America isn't dying. It still leads in frontier computing, biotech, aerospace, and capital markets, for example. Its navy remains potent. Its alliance web, while frayed, is still vast. But leadership is not list. Leadership is coherence. The consistent capacity to set rules, enforce norms, mobilize coalitions, and define outcomes. That's where it's lacking under Trump, perhaps. That's where it is adapting, perhaps. Shedding the post-World War II mythology of omnipotence in favor of prudence. As the old saying goes, let discretion be better part of valor. It is embracing limits of its ambition. China's $1 trillion surplus is not simply a feat of exports. It is a vote of confidence from the world's practical economy, an admission that the Chinese factory is often cheaper, faster, and more reliable than alternatives. Still, China's $1 trillion surplus is the drumbeat of a manufacturing empire that does not need to lead ideologically because it dominates practically. That still does not mean Chinese hegemony. America leaves a world of contested modularity, a world of many centers, many corridors, and many calculations. And in that world, leadership is earned not by declaring intentions, but by delivering capacity. The $1 trillion surplus is capacity. The UK report of the Parliament is a demand for capacity. The NSS of the United States is a concession to capacity. India's 2047 Atmanirbhar vision is a race to that capacity. May all come together. Moving on to the next one. It's upon us again, year after year. Nothing changes. If you have lived in Delhi NCR for a week this winter, you have already smoked the equivalent of several packs of cigarettes without ever lighting one. The national capital turns each winter into a gas chamber. The sun itself looks ill through the toxic haze. I want to rage like I do every year, for pretty much apart from keeping my car serviced and having a pollution under control certificate, I cannot do anything else but watch or gasp as the governments of all political persuasion fail year after year.
दिल्ली के लोगों से माफी मांग तो इतना कहना चाहता हूं 9-10 महीनों में कोई सरकार आपको पूरा का पूरा पोल्यूशन को साफ कर सके ऐसा असंभव है। लेकिन मैं दिल्ली वासियों आपको बताना चाहता हूं आम आदमी पार्टी की सरकार जो बेईमानी करके चल कर गई है हमने उससे बेहतर करके हर दिन का AQI कम करा है।
This was Delhi Environment Minister Manjinder Singh Sirsa being honest about his failures, till he twisted the knife and put the onus on earlier AAP government in Delhi or the present one in Punjab. But then what of Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, both ruled by the BJP? It is a geography of criminal negligence on the part of administrations from the fields of Punjab to the farms of western Uttar Pradesh. It is a cycle of mismanaged circumstances where sometimes religion, as in the case of Diwali crackers, or other times poor practices, as in the case of construction dust, become the excuse for letting things be. But politeness can no longer breathe. It's a cycle that begins with post-monsoon clean slate of clean air. But first comes road construction and repair activity with its tar burning. Just as the dust is settling, construction picks a pace to meet Diwali possession deadlines of builders. Come Diwali and you have firecrackers spanning a week. By the time you think there's a breather, comes stubble burning which goes all of November. And just when you believe it is all over comes winter fog, mixing all the smoke of last 2 months and turning toxic smog. Lungs go heavy. You feel there's an elephant on your chest. The yoga teacher refuses pranayam. Schools shut. Odd even comes into play. The administrative gymnastics of bureaucrats are matched by mental acrobatics of courts and tribunals, with piecemeal solutions thrown around like that water spray gun on the roads. Not just Delhi NCR, but the entire Indo-Gangetic plain becomes a place of collective funeral in waiting. You can almost map the hypocrisy by geography. Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, Delhi, all are accomplices. The pollution control boards control everything except pollution. The tragedy is invisible. There are no ambulance sirens, no bursting ICUs, only millions quietly inhaling slow poison. Perhaps that's why no one declares curfews or marches on Parliament. It is a silent massacre, without sound, but with deep consequence. Every breath cuts months from our lives. Every winter, Delhi loses a little more of its future. When foreign diplomats call Delhi a punishment posting, when oxygen cylinder dealers brag of brisk business, when yoga teachers postpone classes because the air is too toxic for deep breathing, we should hang our heads. This is not merely administrative failure, it is national humiliation. While governments do their annual gigs of shame on pollution, you should start with some personal choices. Put on a mask, buy an air purifier if you can afford. Follow rules on vehicular pollution. The India-China thaw has come in time perhaps. Every other day I see the Chinese embassy in Delhi posting the lessons from the Beijing experience. Even if it is to shame us, let us take the shame and learn. A decade ago, Beijing was where Delhi is today. Its PM 2.5 levels averaged over 100 micrograms per meter cube in 2013. Now, that number has fallen to below 30 micrograms. Still not alpine fresh, but a spectacular improvement born of relentless policy and execution. We should swallow our ego and learn. First up, to be able to do that, we need to treat pollution as war, not as weather report. Beijing declared a formal war on pollution. Targets were not advisory, they were mandatory, with mayors held personally liable for missed air quality goals. Delhi and NCR states need similar accountability, fix deadlines, publish data, penalize departments that fail, sack bureaucrats and ministers. Second, restructure industry. Beijing relocated 3,000 high-polluting factories, including its giant Shugong steel plant, converting the site into a green cultural hub. Delhi, meanwhile, allows old foundries to operate inside residential belts like Wazirpur and Okhla. The Union Territory must move such units to planned industrial zones equipped with waste treatment systems, while offering workers retraining in cleaner trades. Nearby coal-powered plants, Dadri, Jhajjar, Panipat, must either shift to cleaner fuels or be phased out, exactly as Beijing did. Then comes the most difficult part, coordination cutting across the political divide. Beijing's turnaround succeeded because of regional collaboration across the Beijing, Tianjin, Hebei, or the BTH cluster. Pollutants have no borders. Delhi's crisis is inseparable from Noida's and Gurgaon's. We need a legally empowered NCR Clean Air Commission modeled on the BTH Alliance, coordinating real-time data, uniform emission standards, and emergency actions. No more fractured controls. Lesson 4. Use technology relentlessly. Beijing employs big data platforms and AI to locate pollution hotspots and enforce compliance. Drones track illegal construction and burning. Delhi has the brains, perhaps it lacks execution. Equip the central and state pollution control boards with predictive analytics, not just monitors that max out at 500 AQI. Public dashboards that name defaulters will generate deterrence faster than secret memos ever could. Replicating Beijing will be hard. China runs an authoritarian system, remember. India balances democracy, federalism, and poverty. Yet, progress is possible within freedom, provided leadership treats public health as non-negotiable. Unfortunately, we did not see it in Parliament. Our Constitution promises the right to life. Clean air is its first condition. You have to be able to breathe. Delhi cannot afford another winter of paralysis. Suppose we integrate lessons practically, enforce BS6 vehicles, retire polluting factories, scale EV infrastructure, monitor through AI, and coordinate NCR-wide policy. Perhaps within 5 years, the city could potentially halve its PM 2.5 levels, a transformation equal to Beijing's early progress. That means millions fewer asthma attacks, billions saved in healthcare, and children who can run outdoors without coughing. But we must start with honesty. We failed. The governments, all of them failed. The rest of us let them fail, allowed them to fail. Now the question is whether we choose despair or discipline. Clean air will not arrive through court orders or token bans, but through collective courage of citizens who demand action and administrators who finally deliver. The next winter does not have to smell like this. If Delhi finds the will, it can once again let the sun shine clearly on the Yamuna. Until then, every breath we take is both a protest and a prayer. Thanks for watching.
आधे बाउल दही में 4 चम्मच MDH चटनी पुदीना मसाला डाला, स्टर करो, पुदीना चटनी तैयार। MDH चटनी पुदीना मसाला।
Amity has been ranked among the top universities globally for producing the most employable graduates by the Times Higher Education UK. Yet another testimony to Amity's excellent placement record.
थोड़े में ज्यादा स्वाद, यही तो है इसकी खास बात। वाओ मामा, क्या स्वाद है? अरे मेरे राजा, सबका राजा आरती और मसाला।
Please stop!
झुमका, तेरा झुमका, तेरा झुमका।
Not there. मेरा काउंटर टॉप टूट जाएगा।
तेरा झुमका।
No. मेरी चिमनी टूट जाएगी। What are you doing?
रानी, इस घर में कुछ है जो टूटता नहीं।
ये पिलर कभी नहीं टूटेगा। रुंगटा स्टील TMT से बना।
रुंगटा नहीं तो घर स्ट्रॉन्ग नहीं। रुंगटा स्टील TMT बार एकदम सॉलिड।
ये है सीक्रेट रेसिपी MDH का जीरा सिप जल जीरा मसाला।
So Ramnath Goenka told me he was driving the car.